The holiday dinner was in full swing, with laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. But beneath the festive atmosphere, a dark cloud loomed. As I sat across from my sister Alyssa and her husband Dean, I couldn't help but notice the forced smiles and the tension simmering beneath the surface. "Another year gone by and still no little ones running around," Dean remarked, his tone laced with sarcasm. "I guess some people just aren't cut out for parenthood." Alyssa's face fell, her eyes downcast as she stared at her empty plate. Dean's words cut deep, and I could see the pain etched on her features. It was a familiar sight. The once vibrant and confident Alyssa had become a mere shadow of her former self. As the evening progressed, Dean's barbs continued, each one chipping away at Alyssa's already fragile spirit. I watched helplessly, my own anger simmering beneath the surface. How could this man, who was supposed to love and cherish my sister, treat her with such cruelty? When the night finally drew to a close, I pulled Alyssa aside. "You don't deserve this," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. "He's not the man you think he is." Alyssa's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "You don't understand," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "He's all I have." As I watched her walk away, hand in hand with Dean, a sense of dread washed over me. Something wasn't right, and I knew I had to get to the bottom of it, no matter what it took. The drive back to my city was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of Alyssa's plight. I couldn't shake the feeling that Dean was hiding something, that his public persona was nothing more than a carefully crafted facade. Determined to uncover the truth, I started digging into Dean's past. What I found was a trail of broken relationships and whispered accusations. Stories of emotional abuse and manipulation that sent chills down my spine. With each new revelation, my suspicions grew stronger. Dean wasn't the loving husband he pretended to be. He was a master manipulator, preying on vulnerable women and slowly stripping away their sense of self-worth. As the days turned into weeks, the calls from Alyssa became more frequent and more concerning. Her once vibrant voice was now tinged with despair, her words laced with hopelessness. It was as if the life was being drained from her, bit by bit. I knew I had to act quickly before it was too late. Alyssa needed me, and I wasn't about to let her down. With a heavy heart and a burning sense of determination, I made a decision that would change both of our lives forever. The revelations about Dean's past sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't believe the man Alyssa had married, the man she trusted and devoted her life to, was capable of such cruelty. But the evidence was undeniable, and with each new discovery, my determination to protect my sister only grew stronger. As I pored over the records of Dean's former relationships, a pattern began to emerge. He would charm and woo his victims, showering them with affection and promises of a future together. But once they were hooked, the mask would slip, revealing a manipulative and emotionally abusive monster. I remembered the phone calls from Alyssa, her voice trembling as she recounted Dean's latest outburst or cutting remark. The once confident, vibrant woman I knew had been replaced by a shell of her former self, her spirit slowly crushed by the man who was supposed to love her. Rage boiled within me as I read the harrowing accounts of Dean's ex-partners, each one detailing the same cycle of emotional and psychological abuse. It was a twisted game he played, slowly stripping away their self-worth until they were nothing but empty husks, utterly dependent on him. I knew I had to act, to pull Alyssa from the clutches of this monster before it was too late. But how could I make her see the truth when she was so deeply ensnared in his web of lies? The answer came in the form of a frantic call from Alyssa one night. Through her sobs, she recounted how Dean had berated her once again for her inability to conceive, his words cutting deeper than any knife ever could. "He says I'm worthless," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "that no man will ever want me if I can't give him children." In that moment, something within me snapped. I couldn't stand by and watch as my sister's spirit was slowly crushed, her dreams and aspirations reduced to ash by this vile creature. "Alyssa, listen to me," I said, my voice firm and resolute. "You are not worthless. You are strong, beautiful, and capable of anything you set your mind to. Dean is the one who is broken, and it's time he faced the consequences of his actions." There was a pause, and then Alyssa spoke, her voice trembling but laced with a newfound determination. "What do you have in mind?" A plan began to form in my mind, a scheme to not only free Alyssa from Dean's clutches, but to expose him for the monster he truly was. It would be risky, but the alternative, watching my sister wither away under his abuse, was unthinkable. "I'm coming to visit," I said, a steely resolve in my voice. "And when I do, we're going to take that son of a bitch down, once and for all." The drive to Alyssa's house was tense, a heavy silence hanging in the air. I clutched the steering wheel, my knuckles white with determination. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for, the moment when I would finally confront the monster who had been tormenting my sister. As I pulled into the driveway, my heart sank. The once vibrant home that had been filled with laughter and warmth now looked lifeless, the curtains drawn and an air of gloom surrounding it. It was as if the very essence of Alyssa had been drained from its walls. I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what was to come. This wasn't going to be easy, but I had to be strong, for Alyssa's sake. The door opened, and there she stood, a mere shadow of the woman I once knew. Her eyes were hollow, her cheeks sunken, and her posture slumped, as if the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. "Tori," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What are you doing here?" I forced a smile, trying to mask the pain I felt at seeing her in such a state. "I need your help," I lied, hoping the ruse would be enough to gain entry. Alyssa hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting back into the house as if she was afraid of being overheard. Finally, she stepped aside, allowing me to pass. As I stepped into the living room, I was greeted by a sight that sent a chill down my spine. Dean sat in his armchair, his eyes narrowed and a twisted sneer on his lips. Well, he drawled, his voice dripping with contempt. "If it isn't the meddling sister." I felt my blood boil, but I forced myself to remain calm. This was exactly what he wanted, to get a rise out of me, to throw me off balance. "Dean," I said, my voice even and measured, "we need to talk." He let out a bark of laughter, his eyes cold and lifeless. "Talk? About what exactly? Your delusional little crusade to save Alyssa from me?" I opened my mouth to respond, but Alyssa beat me to it. "Don't," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, just go." I turned to her, my heart breaking at the sight of her cowering in fear. This wasn't the Alyssa I knew. This was a shell, a mere fragment of the strong, vibrant woman she had once been. "No," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not leaving until we sort this out, once and for all." Dean stood, his frame towering over us as he advanced. "You've got a lot of nerve coming into my house and making demands," he snarled. "Alyssa is my wife, and she'll do as I say." I felt a surge of anger coursing through my veins, but I refused to back down. "Not anymore," I said, my voice steady. "You've had your way for too long, but it ends here." Dean's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought he might strike me, but then a sickening smile spread across his face. "Fine," he said, his voice laced with venom. "Let's have it out, then. But I promise you, sister dearest, you're going to regret ever sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." As he turned and stalked from the room, I knew that the battle lines had been drawn. This was it, the moment of truth, the moment when I would either succeed in freeing Alyssa from her torment or lose her forever to the clutches of this monster. I turned to Alyssa, my eyes filled with determination. "It's going to be okay," I said, taking her hand in mine. "I won't let him hurt you anymore." The tension in the air was palpable as we gathered for the family dinner. Alyssa's in-laws sat at one end of the table, their faces a mask of disapproval as they eyed me with suspicion. Dean, ever the charming host, flitted about with a smile plastered on his face, a smile that I knew hid a depth of darkness and cruelty. As the meal progressed, I could feel the weight of their stares, each one a silent accusation. They knew why I was here, and they were not happy about it, but I refused to back down, not after seeing the shell of a woman my sister had become. "So, Tori," Dean said, his voice dripping with false sweetness, "what brings you to town for this little visit?" I met his gaze head-on, my jaw set in determination. "I think you know exactly why I'm here, Dean." A tense silence fell over the table, broken only by the sound of silverware scraping against plates. Alyssa's in-laws exchanged a worried glance, their eyes darting between Dean and me, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Alyssa," I said, turning to my sister, "you don't have to live like this anymore. You deserve so much better." Dean let out a bark of laughter, his eyes narrowing into slits. "Better?" he spat. Who's gonna want her, a barren failure of a woman? The words hung in the air like a physical blow, and I saw Alyssa flinch as if she had been struck. My heart ached for her, this once vibrant and confident woman reduced to a mere shell by the man who was supposed to love and protect her. That's enough, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I won't sit here and listen to you berate her like this anymore. Dean's eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of fear cross his face. But then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a twisted sneer. Or what? He taunted. You gonna try and stop me? This is my house, and Alyssa is my wife. She does what I say, or else. I felt a surge of anger coursing through my veins, but I forced myself to remain calm. This was exactly what he wanted, to get a rise out of me, to throw me off balance, but I refused to play his game. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, hitting the record button with a steady hand. Say that again, Dean, I said, my voice even and measured. Say it for the record. Dean's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought he might refuse. But then something shifted in his expression, a twisted sense of pride, a sick desire to flaunt his control. Alyssa is mine, he said, his voice low and menacing. She does what I say when I say it, or she'll be sorry. She's nothing without me, a worthless, barren failure. The words hung in the air, heavy and sickening. But then a sudden noise from the hallway made us all turn, and there stood Alyssa, her eyes wide and her face a mask of horror. Alyssa, Dean said, his voice a sickening blend of false sweetness and barely contained rage. How long have you been standing there? But Alyssa didn't respond. Instead, she turned to me, her eyes shining with a newfound fire, a spark of defiance that I hadn't seen in years. Play it back, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. I want to hear it again. And as the recording played, filling the room with Dean's vile words, I saw something shift in Alyssa's demeanor. The fear and uncertainty that had held her captive for so long began to melt away, replaced by a steely determination that set my heart soaring. This was it, the moment we had been waiting for, the moment when the tide would finally turn, and as Alyssa squared her shoulders and met Dean's gaze head-on, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The room was deathly silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Alyssa stood before Dean, her eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in years, a fire that had been all but extinguished by his torrent of abuse and manipulation. Well, she said, her voice trembling but laced with a newfound strength. What do you have to say for yourself? Dean's face contorted into a mask of rage, his lips curling into a snarl. You ungrateful little... Enough, Alyssa's voice rang out, cutting him off mid-sentence. I'm done listening to your lies, your twisted words designed to break me down. She took a step forward, her shoulders squared and her chin held high. You thought you could control me, didn't you? That by belittling me, demeaning me, you could crush my spirit and make me dependent on you. Dean opened his mouth to speak, but Alyssa wasn't finished. Well, you were wrong. I am not the weak, worthless woman you tried to make me believe I was. I am strong, and I will not be your victim anymore. A hush fell over the room as Alyssa's words sank in. I could see the shocked expressions on her in-laws' faces, the realization dawning that the carefully constructed facade they had enabled was crumbling before their very eyes. Dean, however, was undeterred. He let out a cruel laugh, his eyes glinting with malice. You think you can just walk away? He sneered. You're nothing without me. Who's going to want a barren, washed-up failure like you? The words hit like a physical blow, and for a moment I saw Alyssa falter. But then something steely flickered in her eyes, and she squared her shoulders once more. That's where you're wrong, she said, her voice ringing with conviction. I am not defined by my ability to have children or by your twisted idea of what a woman should be. I am my own person, with my own hopes, dreams, and worth, and you can't take that away from me anymore. Dean's face contorted with rage, and for a terrifying moment I thought he might lash out physically. But before he could make a move, Alyssa's in-laws stepped forward, their expressions a mix of shame and resignation. Enough, Dean, his mother said, her voice trembling. We've enabled this for far too long. It ends now. Dean whirled on them, his eyes wide with disbelief. You're taking her side? He spat. After everything I've done for this family? But his father just shook his head, a weary sadness etched onto his features. "No, son, we're doing what we should have done a long time ago. Stopping this before it goes any further." The realization seemed to hit Dean all at once, and I watched as the mask of control he had so carefully crafted began to slip. His shoulders slumped, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. "You can't do this," he hissed, his voice laced with desperation. "I won't let you take her from me." But Alyssa simply shook her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "You don't get a say in this anymore, Dean. I'm taking back control of my life, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." And with those words, I knew that the tide had turned, that the nightmare we had been living was finally coming to an end. As Alyssa turned and walked towards me, her head held high, I felt a surge of pride and admiration. This was the Alyssa I knew and loved, the strong, resilient woman who had been buried beneath a mountain of abuse and manipulation, but who had finally found her way back to the surface. And as we embraced, tears of relief and joy streaming down our faces, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but we would face it together. Two sisters, united in their strength and determination to overcome the darkness that had nearly consumed us. And as we walked out of that house, leaving Dean and his toxic web of lies behind, I knew that a new chapter was beginning, one filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a brighter future. The aftermath of Alyssa's confrontation with Dean was like a whirlwind. In the days that followed, we busied ourselves gathering evidence, bank statements, email trails, anything that could help build a case against him. As the truth of his manipulation and abuse came to light, the walls he had so carefully constructed around himself began to crumble. Friends and colleagues who had once sung his praises now turned their backs, their eyes open to the monster lurking beneath the charming facade. But Alyssa and I weren't content with simply exposing him. We wanted to bring him down, to strip him of everything he had used to maintain his twisted grip on power. It was during one of our late-night strategy sessions that the idea took root. Dean was scheduled to attend a high-profile charity event in a few months, an event that would be attended by some of the most influential people in his professional circle. "We need to hit him where it hurts," Alyssa said, her eyes burning with determination. "His reputation, his career, that's what matters most to him." I nodded, already piecing together the plan in my mind. "So we take him down in front of everyone, make a spectacle of it, leave him with nowhere to hide." Alyssa's lips curved into a grim smile. "Exactly. We'll pull back the curtain and show them all the truth, the real Dean, the one who manipulates and abuses without a shred of remorse." Over the next few weeks, we worked tirelessly, gathering testimonies from Dean's former victims, compiling evidence of his financial misdeeds, and crafting a bulletproof case against him. With each new piece of the puzzle, our resolve only grew stronger. The night of the event, I could feel the anticipation crackling in the air like static electricity. Alyssa and I arrived early, taking our seats in the back of the ballroom and watching as the who's who of Dean's professional circle mingled and sipped champagne. When Dean finally arrived, resplendent in his tuxedo and accompanied by a vapid blonde on his arm, I felt a surge of disgust rise within me. How many more women would he destroy if we didn't stop him here and now? As the evening progressed and Dean basked in the adulation of his peers, Alyssa caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. It was time. With a deep breath, I rose from my seat and made my way to the stage, ignoring the confused murmurs that rippled through the crowd. As I took the microphone in hand, a hush fell over the room, all eyes upon me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "I'm sure many of you know Dean, the charming, successful businessman who seems to have it all, but what you don't know is the truth behind the mask." A hushed whisper swept through the crowd, but I pressed on, undeterred. Dean is a master manipulator, a man who preys on vulnerable women and slowly strips away their sense of self-worth until they are nothing but hollow shells, utterly dependent on him. Dean's face contorted with rage, but before he could utter a word, Alyssa stepped forward, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. "I should know," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "For years I was his victim, enduring his abuse and manipulation, until I was little more than a shell of my former self." A gasp rippled through the crowd, and I could see the shock and disbelief etched onto the faces of Dean's colleagues and associates. "But we're not going to let him get away with it anymore," I said, my voice rising in intensity. "We have evidence, bank statements, emails, testimonies from his former victims, all of it painting a picture of a man who cares only for himself and who will stop at nothing to maintain his twisted grip on power." As the evidence began to roll, projected onto screens for all to see, the murmurs of disbelief turned to outraged cries. Dean's carefully cultivated image was unraveling before their very eyes, and there was nowhere for him to hide. When it was over, the room was deathly silent, the weight of the truth hanging heavy in the air. Dean stood alone, his face a mask of fury and desperation, as his colleagues and associates turned their backs on him one by one. In that moment, I knew that our mission had been accomplished. The monster had been unmasked, his true nature laid bare for all to see. And as Alyssa and I embraced, tears of relief and triumph streaming down our faces, I knew that we had not only reclaimed our own lives, but had struck a blow against the very forces of manipulation and abuse that had nearly consumed us. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in years I felt a sense of hope, a belief that justice could be served, and that the shadows of deceit could be banished by the light of truth and resilience. The fallout from the charity event was swift and brutal. Within days, Dean's once sterling reputation lay in tatters, his professional and personal life crumbling around him. As the news of his misdeeds spread like wildfire, colleagues and associates who had once courted his favor now turned their backs, distancing themselves from the toxic whirlwind of scandal that had engulfed him. Clients fled in droves, unwilling to associate with a man whose true nature had been so publicly and humiliatingly exposed. Partnerships dissolved, deals crumbled, and suddenly the empire Dean had so carefully constructed was teetering on the brink of collapse. Through it all, Alyssa and I remained a united front, steeling ourselves against the backlash and vitriol that inevitably came our way. Dean's supporters, those who had chosen to turn a blind eye to his abusive behavior, lashed out with fury, accusing us of sabotage and character assassination. But we refused to be cowed. With each venomous outburst, each attempt to discredit us, we stood firm, armed with the irrefutable evidence of Dean's misdeeds and the knowledge that we had done the right thing. As the dust settled and the smoke cleared, it became abundantly clear that Dean's professional life was over. His once bright star had been extinguished, his carefully cultivated image reduced to ashes by the flames of truth and accountability. In the aftermath, Alyssa and I found ourselves inundated with messages of support and gratitude from those who had suffered at Dean's hands, former partners, colleagues, even strangers who had been touched by our story. It was a humbling reminder that our battle had been bigger than just ourselves, that we had struck a blow against the insidious forces of manipulation and abuse that plagued so many lives. But even as we basked in the warmth of that support, a new challenge loomed on the horizon, the legal battle that was sure to come. Dean, backed into a corner and desperate to salvage what little he had left, was preparing to fight back with everything he had. The lawyers he hired were sharks, ruthless and uncompromising, and they wasted no time in launching a barrage of accusations and counterclaims, painting us as vindictive schemers hell-bent on destroying an innocent man. But we were ready. Armed with the mountain of evidence we had so meticulously gathered, and bolstered by the testimonies of those who had suffered at Dean's hands, we met their attacks head-on, refusing to back down or be intimidated. The courtroom became our battleground, a stage upon which the true depths of Dean's depravity were laid bare. Day after day we presented our case, each piece of evidence a damning indictment of the man who had once held so much power over us. And as the days turned into weeks, something remarkable began to happen. The tide of public opinion, once so firmly in Dean's favor, began to shift. The carefully constructed facade he had hidden behind for so long crumbled under the weight of the truth, and suddenly the world could see him for what he truly was. A monster, a manipulator, a man who had preyed on the vulnerable and destroyed lives without a shred of remorse. In the end, the verdict was a resounding victory. Dean was stripped of his assets, his reputation in tatters, and faced with the prospect of starting over from scratch, a fitting punishment for a man who had built his empire on the broken dreams and shattered lives of those he had so callously exploited. As Alyssa and I emerged from the courthouse, hand in hand, we were greeted by a sea of supporters, their cheers and applause a testament to the power of truth and resilience in the face of adversity. In that moment, as we basked in the warm glow of vindication, I knew that our battle had been won, not just for ourselves, but for all those who had suffered at the hands of those who sought to manipulate and control. The shadows of deceit had been banished, replaced by the blinding light of justice and accountability. And as we looked towards the future, a new chapter beckoned, one filled with the promise of healing, growth, and the knowledge that no matter how dark the night may seem, the dawn will always break through, bringing with it the hope of a better tomorrow. In the aftermath of our courtroom victory, life seemed to move in a blur. The weight of Dean's oppressive presence had finally been lifted, and Alyssa and I found ourselves able to breathe freely for the first time in years. As the dust settled, Alyssa made the decision to file for divorce, severing the toxic ties that had bound her to that monster for far too long. The process was grueling, but with the evidence we had amassed and the public outcry against Dean's actions, the outcome was never in doubt. When the final decree was handed down, granting Alyssa not only her freedom, but a significant portion of Dean's assets as well, it felt like a weight had been lifted from our shoulders. Finally, after years of suffering and struggle, justice had been served. In the weeks and months that followed, Alyssa began to blossom once more, the vibrant, confident woman I had known and loved, slowly emerging from the shadows of her past trauma. It was a remarkable transformation to witness, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and its ability to heal, even from the deepest of wounds. As for me, I found solace in the knowledge that our battle had not been fought in vain. The outpouring of support and gratitude from those who had suffered at the hands of abusers like Dean was overwhelming, a constant reminder that our actions had struck a blow against the very forces of manipulation and control that had nearly destroyed us. But even as we basked in the glow of our hard-won victory, a new challenge loomed on the horizon, the question of what came next. For years, our lives had been consumed by the battle against Dean, and now that the dust had settled, we found ourselves at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. It was during one of our late-night conversations, as we sat on the porch sipping wine and watching the stars, that the answer finally came to us. "You know," Alyssa said, her voice thoughtful, "I've been thinking about starting my own business." I turned to her, intrigued. "Oh, what did you have in mind?" A smile played across her lips, and I could see the spark of determination in her eyes, the same spark that had seen us through our darkest days. "A wellness center," she said, her voice growing more animated with each word. "A place where women who have been through what we went through can come and find support, healing, and a community that understands what they're going through." As she spoke, I could see the vision taking shape, a haven, a sanctuary where those who had been broken by the cruelty of others could find the strength to pick up the pieces and rebuild their lives. "That's brilliant," I said, my heart swelling with pride. "You're going to change lives, Alyssa, just like we did." She reached out and took my hand, her eyes shining with a mix of gratitude and determination. "We did, didn't we? We took on the darkness and won." In that moment, as we sat together under the star-studded sky, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but for the first time in years I felt a sense of hope. A belief that no matter how deep the shadows of deceit might run, they could always be banished by the light of truth, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of sisterhood. As the months passed, Alyssa's dream slowly became a reality. With the settlement from Dean and an unwavering determination, she poured her heart and soul into creating a space that was equal parts sanctuary and empowerment center. And as the doors opened and the first wave of clients arrived, I knew that our journey had come full circle. We had faced the darkness head-on, stared it down, and emerged victorious. And now it was our turn to pay that victory forward, to help others find the strength and resilience that had carried us through our darkest days. Because in the end, that was the true legacy of our battle, not the downfall of one man, but the triumph of the human spirit over the forces of manipulation and abuse that sought to diminish it. It was a legacy of hope, of healing, and of the unbreakable bonds that could withstand even the deepest of storms. And as Alyssa and I stood side by side, watching the first clients walk through the doors of her center, I knew that our story was far from over. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with the promise of brighter days and the knowledge that no matter how dark the night may be, the dawn will always break through, ushering in a new era of light, hope, and the unwavering belief that justice will always prevail.
Have you ever had your worth slapped with a price tag so insulting it made your blood boil? Picture this after 9 years of pouring my heart into a small-town hardware store. My boss looked me dead in the eye and said my work was worth 35% less. In that moment, I didn't know whether to laugh at the absurdity, cry for the betrayal, or storm out with a gesture he'd never forget. My name's Stella Bennett. I'm 35, and that day changed everything. Have you ever felt like your effort was invisible to the people who should value it most? Drop your story in the comments, I want to hear it. And if this tale of grit and comeback sparks something in you, hit that subscribe button to catch every twist. This is how I went from a gut punch pay cut to something bigger than I ever imagined. It all started in a dusty office that smelled of stale coffee and ink, where the hum of fluorescent lights felt like a countdown. I'd given nearly a decade to that store, a place where I wasn't just a manager, but the heartbeat of the operation. From 5:30 a.m. openings to late-night inventory checks, I was the one who kept the wheels turning. My team relied on me. Customers trusted me. And I took pride in every wrench and nail we sold. But that day, sitting across from a man who saw me as a number, not a person, something snapped. His words, "It's just business." Stella cut deeper than any blade. How do you measure 9 years of sweat? Of showing up when no one else would? In a percentage, I couldn't, and I wouldn't let him. That moment wasn't just about a paycheck. It was about respect, about knowing what I brought to the table. I've spent years building something solid, only to have it dismissed with a shrug. Maybe you've been there, pouring your all into a job, a dream, only to be told it's not enough. It's a sting that lingers, but it's also a spark. That spark lit a fire in me, one that led to choices I never saw coming. Stick with me, because this story isn't just about walking away, it's about what happens when you bet on yourself. Share your moments of being undervalued below. And let's talk about how we rise. If this hits home, give it a like, subscribe, and let's dive into the journey together. It's only the beginning. For 9 years, I was the first to flip on the lights at our hardware store in rural Missouri, a place where the scent of pine and motor oil greeted me like an old friend. At 5:30 a.m., while the town slept under a blanket of stars, I'd unlock the doors, brew a pot of black coffee, and set the stage for the day. The concrete floors, scuffed from years of boots, and shelves brimming with hammers, wrenches, and bolts felt like an extension of me. This wasn't just a job, it was my second home, a community hub where folks knew they'd find a smile and a solution. And as the manager, I prided myself on knowing every customer's name and every tool's purpose. My team leaned on my steady hand, and I thrived on making sure everyone, from new hires to picky shoppers, walked away satisfied. Those early years were golden. I'd train rookies to handle the chaos of a busy Saturday, calm frustrated customers with a knack for listening, and keep the inventory tighter than a drum. The staff respected my straightforward style, maybe a touch strict, but always fair. Regulars, like old Mr. Thompson, who'd buy nails by the pound, trusted me to guide them right. It felt like we were a family, not just a business. But even then, a shadow lingered. The higher-ups, tucked away in their city offices, never saw the sweat behind our success. Big meetings were a parade of empty promises, bonuses that never came, recognition that stayed just out of reach. I'd sit there, a bystander in my own story, giving my all but getting little back. Still, I pushed on, believing my work spoke for itself. Then the air shifted. A few months ago, whispers of a new owner started circling, and I felt a knot in my gut. Something was brewing, and it wasn't good. Entered Derek Wallace, young, slick. With a smile that didn't reach his eyes, he swept in, all ambition and arrogance, buying the chain with grand talk of modernizing and optimizing profits. At first, I hoped he'd bring fresh energy, but Derek wasn't like the old owners, who'd chat with us over coffee and care about the team. He saw the store as a machine, and we were just cogs replaceable, expendable. He'd hole up in his office, poring over spreadsheets, barely glancing at the floor where the real work happened. When he did look at us, it was like he was crunching numbers in his head, not seeing people. The store's warmth began to fade. Derek's obsession with cutting costs turned our shelves sparse. Popular tools vanished, leaving customers grumbling. He rolled out new sales targets, impossible to hit, and held endless meetings about efficiency. "We need to trim expenses," he'd say, his voice sharp as a blade, as if our little victories, like solving a customer's problem with a grin, meant nothing. The team's morale sank. The laughter that once echoed through the aisles grew quiet. I tried to fight back, suggesting we invest in quality tools or boost service to stand out, but Derek would just nod, flash that hollow smile, and ignore me. My voice, once a cornerstone, felt like it was bouncing off walls. Every day, I felt more like a relic in a machine I didn't recognize. The store I'd nurtured was slipping away, replaced by a cold, profit-hungry shell. I'd drive the 10 miles home, the Missouri hills blurring past, wondering if my years of dedication were just a line item on Derek's ledger. The team sensed it, too. Whispers of restructuring spread like wildfire. I didn't want to believe it, but the signs were clear. Derek didn't see the soul of this place, the heartbeat I'd kept alive. Something was coming, and it was closer than I wanted to admit. I just didn't know how it would break or make me. The air in Derek's office felt thick, like the calm before a storm. It was a Wednesday morning, the kind where the Missouri sun barely peeked through the clouds, and I was summoned for a private meeting, something Derek had never done. His desk was a fortress of papers and spreadsheets, the faint whiff of fresh coffee doing little to soften the tension. He didn't look up at first, just shuffled documents as if I were an afterthought. Then, with a voice smooth as polished steel, he said, "We're restructuring payroll. It's about cost cutting, optimizing profits." His eyes finally met mine, carrying a weight I couldn't yet name. "For managers, we're proposing a 35% pay cut. It's necessary for the store's sustainability. Nothing personal, just business." The words landed like a sledgehammer, splintering the pride I'd carried for 9 years. I sat there, breath caught in my throat, as those words echoed nothing personal. How could it not be personal? Every early morning, every late night, every customer I'd won over with a smile, was that not personal? My mind raced through memories of hauling stock in the rain, training kids who became family, and making this place hum like a well-tuned engine. And now, Derek, with his cold calculations, was saying it was worth less. A 35% cut wasn't just numbers. It was a verdict on my value, a dismissal of my devotion. I wanted to argue, to list every sacrifice, but his gaze was unyielding, waiting for me to fold. Instead, something inside me hardened, a spark of defiance flaring bright. I took a slow breath, steadying the tremor in my hands. "Derek," I said, my voice calmer than I felt, "I appreciate the meeting, but I can't accept this. I'm resigning. Effective immediately. I won't stay where my effort isn't valued." His eyebrows twitched, a flicker of surprise breaking his composure. "Are you sure?" he asked, as if I'd misspoken. I nodded. the decision settling like bedrock. I stood, the chair scraping softly, and walked out without a backward glance. The door's click behind me was a quiet thunder, severing a chapter I'd poured my soul into. I felt a strange lightness, like shedding a coat I'd outgrown, but the weight of what I'd lost lingered. The drive home was 10 miles of rolling hills, the sunset painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, as I wrestled with the ache of leaving. That store had been my proving ground, where I'd built trust, respect, and a legacy. Yet, as the road stretched on, a whisper of freedom crept in. I'd chosen myself over a system that saw me as expendable. The silence in my car wasn't empty. It was alive with possibility. That night, sleep eluded me, my mind replaying the moment I walked away. Had I been rash? No, I'd been true. If you've ever had to choose your worth over a paycheck, tell me about it in the comments. Your stories fuel mine. So let's keep this fire burning. The days after I left felt like holding my breath. My house, usually a quick stop between shifts, became a quiet cage, the ticking clock mocking my sudden stillness. For years, I'd thrived on the store's rhythm, bustling aisles, ringing phones, the clatter of tools. Now, 3 days later, I wandered my kitchen, brewing coffee I barely drank. Caught between relief and a gnawing void, I'd walked away with my dignity, but what came next? The question hung heavy, unanswered. As I stared out at the Missouri dawn, its soft pinks no match for the uncertainty swirling inside me, then my phone buzzed, shattering the silence. It was James, our stock guy, his voice tight with urgency. Everything's falling apart. He said, orders are a mess, suppliers are mad, and we can't keep up. It's chaos without you. His words hit like a revelation. Carla, a senior cashier, called next. Her tone softer, but just as raw. Customers keep asking for you. They say it's not the same. The service feels hollow now. I listened, heart pounding, as they painted a picture of a store unraveling. The team was lost, groping for the structure I'd built, and customers, folks I'd known for years, felt the absence of my care. It was humbling, a mirror reflecting a truth I hadn't fully seen. I hadn't realized how much I'd held that place together, like mortar in a brick wall. I was the unseen strength, binding the team, the stock, and the service. Their calls weren't just complaints, they were proof of my impact. A legacy Derek's numbers couldn't erase. Sitting on my porch, the morning air crisp, I felt a shift. The emptiness wasn't failure, it was space for something new. I'd been the backbone of that store, and its cracks without me were a strange validation. If you've ever left a place and learned you were its glue, share that in the comments. It's a bittersweet truth, isn't it? Those calls kept coming, each one a thread tying me to the life I'd left. The store's decline wasn't my burden, but it lit a spark. I wasn't done, I was just beginning. The world beyond those concrete floors was waiting, and I was ready to find my place in it. Hit that like button if this resonates, and subscribe to see where this journey leads. We're not just telling stories here, we're rewriting endings. On the 8th day, as I stirred sugar into my coffee, my phone lit up with a familiar number. It was Janet, a spark of a woman I'd trained years ago, her voice bubbling with purpose. "Meet me at the cafe downtown," she said. "I got something you need to hear." Curiosity tugged me out the door. The Missouri air sharp with promise. At the cozy cafe, all warm wood and clinking mugs, Janet leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "I'm managing a rival construction store now, and we're opening a new branch. I want you to lead it. You're the best I've ever worked with. And this team needs your fire." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me from the fog of my resignation. A new store, a fresh canvas. Could I rebuild what I'd lost? I said yes before my coffee cooled, the decision igniting a hunger I hadn't felt in weeks. The new store, 15 miles across town, was a blank slate of polished floors and empty shelves. Buzzing with potential, I dove in, keys jangling like a promise. Hiring came first, young folks with eager eyes, ready to learn. I taught them not just how to stack bolts or ring up sales, but how to listen, to make every customer feel seen. We crafted a space where service wasn't a transaction, but a connection. Where a farmer buying screws left with a smile, I poured my vision into every detail, neatly arranged tools, handwritten signs, a warmth that invited folks to linger. The team caught my spark, their energy transforming the store into a beacon. Within weeks, the place hummed. Old customers from my previous life trickled in, their faces lighting up with recognition. "This feels right," they'd say, grabbing a hammer or a bag of nails. Word spread through town, drawing new faces daily. Our traffic surged, the register chiming like a victory bell. My team thrived, their pride mirroring mine as we built something extraordinary. Meanwhile, whispers reached me of Derek's store crumbling, sales plummeted, shelves sat bare, and his staff dwindled, some fired, others fleeing a joyless grind. Customers grumbled about jacked up prices and curt service, switching to us without a backward glance. I didn't gloat, but the irony wasn't lost on me. Then, one crisp morning, Derek walked in. His suit was crisp, but his smile was a flimsy mask. He strolled the aisles, fingers grazing my meticulously stocked shelves, his eyes darting like he was sizing up a rival. At the checkout, he leaned in, voice dripping with false ease. "Nice setup. Business booming." "Huh?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "Doing just fine." "Derek, thanks for stopping by," he pressed, fishing for sales figures. But I cut him off with a line that tasted like justice. "Nothing personal, just business." His jaw tightened, the facade cracking as he left without a word. That moment was a quiet triumph. Proof I'd built something he couldn't touch. Have you ever turned a setback into a win? Share it below. Let's celebrate the comebacks. Like and subscribe to see how this story ends. Weeks later, I parked across from Derek's store, the place I'd once brought to life. The facade, once vibrant with bustling shoppers, now sagged under faded discount signs. Like a tired actor in a failing play, through the glass, I saw employees shuffling, their faces blank. No trace of the laughter we'd shared. Derek was there, pacing, his gestures frantic as he barked at a dwindling staff. He didn't notice me, hidden behind my car window. But I saw it all, the chaos of a dream neglected. A pang of sadness hit. Not for him, but for what could have been if he'd valued people over profit. Yet, as I watched, a calm settled over me. My path was elsewhere, forged in courage and clarity, driving away, the Missouri hills rolling under a twilight sky. I traced the arc of my journey. That pay cut wasn't just an insult, it was a mirror, forcing me to see my worth beyond a paycheck. Every overtime shift, every customer I'd helped, every late-night stock count, they weren't just tasks. They were pieces of a legacy, a testament to my belief in doing work that mattered. Derek's words, "just business," had tried to strip that away, but they only sharpened my resolve. I'd found my strength in the rubble of rejection, building a store that hummed with purpose and a team that felt like family. My value wasn't in what I earned, but in the lives I touched, the trust I earned. To every woman watching, hear this: never settle for less than your worth. Your fire, your grit, your heart, they're priceless. No matter who tries to put a number on them, rise every time the world pushes you down, because your dignity is your power. If you faced a moment where you had to fight for your values, drop it in the comments. I read every one, and your stories light up mine. Hit that like button if this resonates, and subscribe to catch more tales of turning pain into triumph. We're not just surviving, we're rewriting the script. As I settled into my new rhythm, my phone rang one rainy afternoon. Janet's voice crackled with excitement. "The regional council's blown away by your store's success." She said, "They want you to lead a new district. Shape it with your vision. What do you say the offer was a doorway? A chance to stretch my wings wider than I dared dream?" I smiled. The rain tapping my window like applause. "I'm in," I said, feeling the road ahead unfurl. Derek could scramble with his promotions, but I was building something bigger, a legacy rooted in respect and heart. The game wasn't over. It was mine to play. Keep sharing your stories. And let's build our comebacks together. See you in the next chapter. As I stood in the glow of my new store's success, the Missouri dusk casting long shadows, I realized the pay cut that shattered me was also my salvation. Derek's cold dismissal taught me a lesson sharper than any spreadsheet. My worth isn't tethered to someone else's valuation. For years, I'd measured my value by the store's rhythm, by the nod of a customer or the hum of a busy day, but I'd let others define its price, walking away, rebuilding. And watching my vision thrive showed me that true value lies in the courage to honor my work. It's in the grit to rise when you're pushed down, the heart to build something meaningful, and the resolve to never let a number dim your fire. That lesson is my compass now, guiding every choice to lead with integrity and heart. If someone tries to undervalue you, remember your impact, your passion, your dignity. They're yours to claim. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Share how you've learned your worth in the comments. And let's keep lifting each other.
What do you do when the family you've invested your life in texts you and disappears? I'm Violet, 29, and I was sipping coffee in my Nashville apartment when my phone lit up with a text that ripped through my chest. It wasn't an apology or an explanation, just a cold directive from my mother, Sandra, telling me I wasn't welcome at my sister Luna's wedding. What did it matter? I'd paid for the flowers, the venue, even the dress Luna would wear to erase me. I sat there, the spring breeze teasing the curtains, wondering how love could be like a deal gone bad. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who cause the deepest wounds, and how I found the strength to stop their bleeding. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where the light is soft and golden, the promise of a day that can hold you gently. I was pouring coffee into a chipped ceramic mug, the one I kept because it felt real, when my phone vibrated on the counter. I ignored it at first, thinking it was a grocery app confirmation or a dentist reminder, but curiosity got the better of me. And I swiped the screen open. The words stared back, unblinking. "Don't go to Luna's wedding. Travis's family doesn't want you there. No greeting, no softening. Just my mother's signature brevity, sharp as a paper cut." I read it again, then a third time, waiting for the joke that never came. My stomach clenched, my coffee growing cold beside me. I had spent $500 on a deposit, $900 on the wedding Airbnb, countless hours arranging a lilac and sage palette for a day I was now forbidden. The silence in the room weighed heavily on my ribs, like a vice. I didn't respond. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, composing responses I would never send: sarcasm, hurt, defiance. Instead, I sat down, the chair creaking under my weight, and let the message burn into my retinas until the screen faded. Travis's family, whom I'd met twice for awkward lunches, had vetoed me. Worse, my mother had delivered her verdict like a weather report: clear skies, a slim chance for Violet's self-esteem. The breeze blowing through the window carried the scent of blooming dogwoods, but it couldn't penetrate the fog that enveloped me. I was the one who sent the money when Luna and Travis faced eviction, the one who paid $612 for their engagement photo shoot, and now I was the inconvenience swept under the rug. The next morning, my phone rang again. Sandra, with her sense of timing, texted Thursday lunch. Just us. I should have declined. Said it was a deadline or a migraine, but at this age, there's still a part of you that hopes for an explanation. A crack in the wall where love can slip through. I typed sure and hit send before I could think too much about it. We met at a coffee shop on South 12th Street. All reclaimed wood tables and overpriced kale bowls. Sandra was there, sipping sparkling water, her face welcoming like a closed gate. No hug. No smile, just a wave to the chair across from her. "I'm glad you could come," she said, as if I were the one being difficult. I nodded, my throat tight, and ordered a salad I knew I'd barely touch. The conversation began with small talk, a thin veneer covering the real issue. Then she leaned forward, her voice low. "I know the text took you by surprise." I raised an eyebrow. "Surprised me. That was the guillotine." She shrugged, unfazed. I don't think a long explanation would help. My pulse pounded behind my eyes, but I kept my tone calm. "Help who you Luna Travis's parents." Her eyes narrowed, a familiar sign that I'd crossed a line. "You always do everything for me, Violet." It's exhausting. The words hit me like a slap, and I felt my old reflex to apologize, to retreat. Instead, I leaned back. I was uninvited. I thought I was allowed to react. Sandra didn't flinch, just pushed her napkin around her plate. "Travis's family is very traditional. Luna doesn't want trouble." I forced a smile, as bitter as the coffee I hadn't drunk. "Because excluding your sister is the definition of peace." The rest of lunch faded into a haze of her calm justification. Luna was more like it. I was being too much, too sensitive, too reactive. I paid, then found it crumpled in my pocket, a $42 insult to my dignity. As I drove home, the Nashville skyline. The moment you realize your family sees you as a wallet instead of a person, something inside you shifts. It's not anger. Not yet. It's a cold, clear focus, like the world snapping into high definition. And after my mother told me I wasn't wanted at Luna's wedding, I started seeing the cracks in the facade I'd spent years propping up in my Nashville condo, surrounded by the ghosts of favors I'd given. I began to document every dollar, every slight. Then a package from my cousin Tess landed in my hands, and the truth spilled out like ink on a page. This is how I woke up to the betrayal and how I started building a case to reclaim my worth. Back in my condo, the silence was heavier than the day before, but it didn't suffocate me anymore. It felt like a canvas, waiting for me to mark it. I sat on the edge of my bed, the soft light filtering through the blinds, and opened my laptop. My fingers moved with purpose, creating a spreadsheet titled Family Ledger, line by line. I cataloged the debts, financial and emotional, that my family had racked up. $800 for Luna and Travis's rent when they were 3 months behind. $5,000 to reverse my father's retirement penalty. $612 for the engagement shoot deposit. $500 for the venue. $180 for the Save the Date website. The numbers stared back, clean and brutal. A ledger of my loyalty. I didn't cry. I felt prepared, like a cartographer mapping a battlefield. The sun dipped below the Nashville skyline, and I whispered to the stillness. They wanted peace. They can keep it without me. The next morning, my phone chimed as I brewed coffee. Out of habit, I opened the family group chat, only to be greeted by a gut punch notification. "You are no longer a participant in this conversation. Not blocked, not muted, just gone." I tapped Luna's Instagram profile, and there it was, a photo from her final dress fitting, captioned, "Can't wait to be surrounded by love," smiley faces, hearts, and comments from Sandra. "So proud of you, baby girl." My father Glenn a thumbs up, and Travis's sister pink dress emojis. I wasn't tagged, wasn't mentioned, wasn't even a shadow in their curated joy. The coffee burned my tongue, but I drank it anyway, letting the heat ground me. They hadn't forgotten me, they'd erased me. Then, another text from Sandra landed, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife. "I know things are tense, but could you send $300 for the flowers? My card's acting up." No apology, no acknowledgement of the wedding band, just a request. Like I was an ATM with a pulse. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Instead, I screenshot the message, the timestamp glaring like evidence in a courtroom. I set the phone down and poured another coffee, this time drinking it hot, letting the bitterness mirror my resolve. They didn't care about the $300, they cared about my compliance, and I was done complying. That afternoon, I found a yellow envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name typed and taped across the front. It felt heavy, intentional, not like junk mail. Inside were printed screenshots from a private group chat I was never meant to see. Luna's words cut first. "We'll get her to pay for the cake." 2. Just guilt her about being the only sibling. Works every time. Clarice followed. "She's not even invited." Problem solved. Jerome chimed in. "Wait. She's still doing the website. That's wild." And Luna again. "She's too nice." It's pathetic. A sticky note clung to the top. In unfamiliar handwriting. "You deserve to see this. T." I didn't need to guess who T was. My cousin Tess. Always quiet. Always watching. Had slipped me the truth like a lifeline. I sat on the couch. The screenshots spread across my lap. My breath steady but sharp. They hadn't mentioned my name once. But I was there in every line, the bank account with a pulse. The sister they'd reduced to a punchline. I stood, walked to my desk, and opened a new folder on my laptop. I titled it, Enough. Into it went the screenshots, the $300 text, and a growing list of every favor I'd done without thanks. The photo album from Luna's grad party, where I'd organized everything but wasn't in a single shared picture, went into the trash chute with a satisfying thud. The silence around me felt respectful now, like it was holding space for my clarity. I wasn't spiraling, I was sorting, sifting through years of loyalty to find the truth beneath. My family had built their dreams on my sacrifices, and now they thought they could discard me. They were wrong. I backed up the folder to a cloud drive, my fingers steady, my mind sharp. This wasn't rage, it was precision, and precision, I was learning, could cut deeper than any scream. Betrayal doesn't just break you, it sharpens you, if you let it. After uncovering my family's private chat, where they mocked me as a pawn in their wedding plans, I stopped being the sister who fixed things. In my Nashville condo, I turned silence into strategy, gathering evidence like a prosecutor building a case. I wasn't just documenting dollars anymore. I was unearthing lies that stretched beyond the wedding, into a business built on my trust. When pressure came to keep quiet, I pushed back, dismantling their carefully curated facade one vendor at a time. This is how I took control, not with tears, but with precision, and watched their empire of ingratitude begin to crack. The morning after Tess's envelope arrived, I sat at my desk, the Enough folder open on my laptop, its contents glowing like a map to justice. I added new files, PayPal statements showing $1 to $250 for the rehearsal dinner deposit, WhatsApp voice notes where Luna laughed about my urgent payments. But a deeper truth nagged at me, a memory of a $10,000 transfer to my mother 3 years ago, supposedly for Luna's tuition. I cross-checked the date, August 4th, against public business records, a trick I'd learned from a colleague. In minutes, I found it Nimbus Edge LLC, registered August 9th, listing Clarice, Luna, and Jerome as members. No mention of me. Yet my savings had seeded their startup. The realization hit like a slow burn. They hadn't just used me, they'd laundered my loyalty into their success. I leaned back, whispering, "You built a fortress on my faith. Let's see how it holds." I emailed Rowena, my old project compliance ally, now running a digital forensics agency, still interested in verifying digital evidence. Her reply was instant, always. "What are we burning down?" I sent her the chat screenshots and PayPal receipts, asking for metadata confirmation. While waiting, I scoured Nimbus Edge's online presence LinkedIn bios, boasting Clarice as co-founder, Luna as strategic growth, my money. Their myth, I printed their tax ID, highlighted the $10,000 transaction ID, and slipped it into a manila envelope labeled Clarice V. Open carefully. The act felt like sealing a warrant. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered, sensing the weight of the moment. Violet. This is Darlene, Travis's mother. Her southern drawl was polished, practiced. Tensions are high. And we want what's best for Luna. I stayed silent, letting her squirm. You feel left out. But Luna's fragile. Any stress could ruin her day. Hold off on anything disruptive. The word curating hung in the air, as if I were a stain to be bleached. I gave a dry chuckle. Disruptive, like being erased after paying thousands. Maybe you should have curated my money out too. A long breath. Then her voice turned icy. Don't do anything you'll regret. She hung up, but her threat only fueled me. I scribbled. Post it. No one who benefits from me gets to erase me, and taped it above my screen. That afternoon, I opened the wedding dashboard, its loading bar a countdown to reckoning. I clicked cancel service on the florist's contract. Erasing the mauve arches Clarice had deemed essential, the photographer, Luna's natural light obsession, was next. Gone with a confirmation email. Then the venue. A $2,500 deposit I'd paid myself. Cancelled with a 90% refund option. I smiled, sharp and fleeting, at the thought of their rustic chic barn fading from their Pinterest dreams. On Canva, I deleted the welcome signs, the seating chart with its clean UX flow, and the RSVP site tied to Luna's livestream. The shared planning folder got a new name, asked Clarice for help. I logged out. The digital slate wiped clean, but I wasn't done. Clarice had left me admin access to Nimbus Edge's payroll system, a careless oversight from when I'd set up their protocols. I scrolled to Friday's batch payments for Luna, Travis, Clarice, Jerome, and clicked pause disbursement. The prompt asked temporary freeze for internal audit. I selected yes, typing in the memo funds pending review. Initiated by VS. My phone erupted. Luna, what are you doing? This is a disaster. Clarice, this is theft. You'll regret this. Jerome. Are you serious? This is illegal. I turned the phone face down and brewed chamomile tea, steeping it for 4 minutes. Stirring in honey, the cup warmed my palms as I sat at the kitchen table, the hush between moments louder than their panic. For the first time, I felt no guilt, no urge to fix their mess. I'd acted, and the clarity was intoxicating. I opened my laptop again, drafting an email to Rowena subject if they retaliate. We go public. Let me know when the files are verified. I sent another to Clarice. No preamble. This isn't sabotage. This is balance. The post-it above my screen fluttered in the Windows draft. Its words a vow I'd keep. They'd underestimated me, assuming I'd stay their silent benefactor. Now, their piece was unraveling, and I held the threads. When you've been invisible for years, stepping into the spotlight feels like breaking a spell. I wasn't just the sister who paid and stayed quiet anymore. I was the truth they couldn't erase. At the rehearsal dinner, under a Nashville Vineyards fairy lights, I brought their lies into the open, not with screams, but with evidence that spoke louder than their curated smiles. This is the moment I stopped being their footnote and became the story they couldn't rewrite. The vineyard was a postcard of perfection, its pergola draped in lights like stars tamed for Instagram. I parked beyond the hedges, my boots crunching on gravel as I approached. A flash drive and folder tucked inside my coat. The maitre d' hesitated, but I walked past, my presence a disruption they hadn't planned for. Inside the tent, soft jazz mingled with calculated laughter, crystal glasses catching candlelight. Luna stood at the head table in champagne satin, flanked by Sandra, Clarice, and Travis, their faces freezing as they saw me. I didn't smile or nod. I crossed the floor, pulled a black speaker from my coat, and set it on the linen. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "This will only take a minute." I pressed play. Clarice's voice spilled out, dripping disdain. "She'll pay." "Just guilt her. She's stupid when she thinks she's helping." Travis followed, sneering. "She creeps me out." Always watching like she's writing you up. Luna's tone was falsely sweet. She won't be at the wedding. Trust me. I'll handle it. Gasps rippled through the tent. Forks froze mid-bite. Sandra's napkin fell limp. The string quartet's bows caught mid-note. The silence after the audio louder than the music. Clarice recovered first. Her voice shrill. That's out of context. I turned to her. Steady. The context is you built Nimbus Edge with my $10,000. My strategy, my silence. Then you erased me from the company. This wedding. Our family. I walked to Zach. Travis's best man. The only neutral soul in this circus. And handed him the folder. This is for you. Inside were receipts, $11, $438, $22 in transfers to Sandra and Clarice, labeled as consulting fees, wire logs from 18 months, a screenshot of Clarice forging my signature on a business agreement, Rowena's notarized summary, metadata locked, IP traced, Kristen, a corporate badge gleaming on her blazer, stepped forward, her voice clear, files authenticated, metadata verified. This isn't edited. Clarice paled. Luna's lips parted, then clamped shut. Travis stood, mute, charm failing him. Zach scanned the folder, then looked up. I'm calling off the wedding, he said. Quiet, but final. The tent imploded. Luna's scream pierced the air, raw and uncurated. Sandra dropped her napkin, hand over mouth. Clarice stormed out. Glenn, trailing silently. Travis reached for Luna, but she slapped his hand away, mascara streaking her face. I didn't wait for their chaos to settle. I turned to the coat rack, my hand in my pocket, and paused at the tent's edge. You didn't want me here, I said, my voice echoing under the canvas. You made that clear, but you didn't count on me stopping the chase. You wanted me gone now. Keep what's left. I stepped into the vineyard's cool air, the fairy lights flickering behind me. No footsteps followed. No voices called. The night pressed in, clean and quiet, like a promise I'd finally made to myself. They'd heard me, every last one, and their silence now was deafening. Betrayal doesn't just break you, it sharpens you. If you let it, after uncovering my family's private chat, where they mocked me as a pawn in their wedding plans, I stopped being the sister who fixed things. In my Nashville condo, I turned silence into strategy. Gathering evidence like a prosecutor building a case, I wasn't just documenting dollars anymore. I was unearthing lies that stretched beyond the wedding, into a business built on my trust. When pressure came to keep quiet, I pushed back, dismantling their carefully curated facade one vendor at a time. This is how I took control, not with tears, but with precision, and watched their empire of ingratitude begin to crack. The morning after Tessa's envelope arrived, I sat at my desk, the enough folder open on my laptop, its contents glowing like a map to justice. I added new files, PayPal statements showing one eyes, $250 for the rehearsal dinner deposit, WhatsApp voice notes where Luna laughed about my urgent payments, but a deeper truth nagged at me. A memory of a $10,000 transfer to my mother 3 years ago, supposedly for Luna's tuition. I cross-checked the date August 4th against public business records, a trick I'd learned from a colleague. In minutes, I found it Nimbus Edge LLC, registered August 9th, listing Clarice, Luna, and Jerome as members. No mention of me. Yet my savings had seeded their startup. The realization hit like a slow burn. They hadn't just used me, they'd laundered my loyalty into their success. I leaned back, whispering, "You built a fortress on my faith. Let's see how it holds." I emailed Rowena, my old project compliance ally, now running a digital forensics agency, still interested in verifying digital evidence. Her reply was instant, always. What are we burning down? I sent her the chat screenshots and PayPal receipts, asking for metadata confirmation. While waiting, I scoured Nimbus Edge's online presence LinkedIn bios boasting Clarice as co-founder, Luna as strategic growth, my money, their myth. I printed their tax ID, highlighted the $10, $1,000 transaction ID, and slipped it into a manila envelope labeled Clarice Fee, open carefully. The act felt like sealing a warrant. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered, sensing the weight of the moment. Violet. This is Darlene. Travis's mother. Her southern drawl was polished. Practiced. Tensions are high, and we want what's best for Luna. I stayed silent, letting her squirm. You feel left out. But Luna's fragile. Any stress could ruin her day. Hold off on anything disruptive. The word curating hung in the air, as if I were a stain to be bleached. I gave a dry chuckle. Disruptive. Like being erased after paying thousands. Maybe you should have curated my money out too. A long breath. Then her voice turned icy. Don't do anything you'll regret. She hung up. But her threat only fueled me. I scribbled a post-it. No one who benefits from me gets to erase me. And taped it above my screen. That afternoon, I opened the wedding dashboard. Its loading bar a countdown to reckoning. I clicked cancel service on the florist's contract. Erasing the mauve arches Clarice had deemed essential. The photographer, Luna's natural light obsession, was next. Gone with a confirmation email. Then the venue. A $2 to $500 deposit I'd paid myself. Cancelled with a 90% refund option. I smiled, sharp and fleeting, at the thought of their rustic chic barn fading from their Pinterest dreams. On Canva, I deleted the welcome signs, the seating chart with its clean UX flow, and the RSVP site tied to Luna's livestream. The shared planning folder got a new name, Asked Clarice for Help. I logged out. The digital slate wiped clean, but I wasn't done. Clarice had left me admin access to Nimbus Edge's payroll system, a careless oversight from when I'd set up their protocols. I scrolled to Friday's batch payments for Luna, Travis, Clarice, Jerome, and clicked Pause Disbursement. The prompt asked temporary freeze for internal audit. I selected Yes, typing in the memo funds pending review. Initiated by VS. My phone erupted. Luna, what are you doing? This is a disaster. Clarice, this is theft. You'll regret this. Jerome, are you serious? This is illegal. I turned the phone face down and brewed chamomile tea, steeping it for 4 minutes, stirring in honey. The cup warmed my palms as I sat at the kitchen table, the hush between moments louder than their panic. For the first time, I felt no guilt, no urge to fix their mess. I'd acted, and the clarity was intoxicating. I opened my laptop again, drafting an email to Rowena, subject if they retaliate. We go public. Let me know when the files are verified. I sent another to Clarice. No preamble. This isn't sabotage. This is balance. The post-it above my screen fluttered in the Windows draft. Its words a vow I'd keep. They'd underestimated me, assuming I'd stay their silent benefactor. Now, their peace was unraveling, and I held the threads. When you've been invisible for years, stepping into the spotlight feels like breaking a spell. I wasn't just the sister who paid and stayed quiet anymore. I was the truth they couldn't erase. At the rehearsal dinner, under a Nashville Vineyards fairy lights, I brought their lies into the open, not with screams, but with evidence that spoke louder than their curated smiles. This is the moment I stopped being their footnote and became the story they couldn't rewrite. The vineyard was a postcard of perfection, its pergola draped in lights like stars tamed for Instagram. I parked beyond the hedges, my boots crunching on gravel as I approached. A flash drive and folder tucked inside my coat. The maitre d' hesitated, but I walked past, my presence a disruption they hadn't planned for. Inside the tent, soft jazz mingled with calculated laughter, crystal glasses catching candlelight. Luna stood at the head table in champagne satin, flanked by Sandra, Clarice, and Travis, their faces freezing as they saw me. I didn't smile or nod. I crossed the floor, pulled a black speaker from my coat, and set it on the linen. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "This will only take a minute." I pressed play. Clarice's voice spilled out, dripping disdain. "She'll pay." Just guilt her. She's stupid when she thinks she's helping. Travis followed. Sneering, she creeps me out. Always watching like she's writing you up. Luna's tone was falsely sweet. She won't be at the wedding. Trust me. I'll handle it. Gasps rippled through the tent. Forks froze mid-bite. Sandra's napkin fell limp. The string quartet's bows caught mid-note. The silence after the audio louder than the music. Clarice recovered first. Her voice shrill. That's out of context. I turned to her. Steady. The context is, you built Nimbus Edge with my $10. Sun dollars. My strategy. My silence. Then you erased me from the company. This wedding. Our family. I walked to Zach. Travis's best man. The only neutral soul in this circus. And handed him the folder. This is for you. Inside were receipts $11, $4.38, $22 in transfers to Sandra and Clarice, labeled as consulting fees, wire logs from 18 months, a screenshot of Clarice forging my signature on a business agreement, Rowena's notarized summary, metadata locked, IP traced, Kristen, a corporate badge gleaming on her blazer, stepped forward, her voice clear, files authenticated, metadata verified. This isn't edited. Clarice paled. Luna's lips parted, then clamped shut. Travis stood, mute, charm failing him. Zach scanned the folder, then looked up. I'm calling off the wedding, he said. Quiet but final. The tent imploded. Luna's scream pierced the air, raw and uncurated. Sandra dropped her napkin, hand over mouth. Clarice stormed out, Glenn trailing silently. Travis reached for Luna, but she slapped his hand away. Mascara streaking her face. I didn't wait for their chaos to settle. I turned to the coat rack, my hand in my pocket, and paused at the tent's edge. You didn't want me here, I said, my voice echoing under the canvas. You made that clear, but you didn't count on me stopping the chase. You wanted me gone, now keep what's left. I stepped into the vineyard's cool air, the fairy lights flickering behind me. No footsteps followed, no voices called. The night pressed in, clean and quiet, like a promise I'd finally made to myself. They'd heard me, every last one, and their silence now was deafening. The ballroom glittered like a chandelier caught in a storm of light, each crystal prism casting diamonds across my sister Sierra's $10, $1,000 wedding dress as she spun, oblivious to the weight of my signature on a $50, $1,000 loan. I stood in the shadows, clutching my tablet, my credit score a silent scream in my mind. At 24, I was Penelope, the reliable sister, the one who paid bills while Sierra danced. But tonight, beneath the champagne toasts and marble echoes, I held a secret clause buried in the loan agreement, a coiled snake waiting to strike. What kind of sister agrees to ruin her future for a wedding? The kind who knows the game is rigged and plays to win. 3 months ago, Sierra had cornered me in our parents' Chicago brownstone, her mascara-streaked face a performance of desperation. Penelope, please, she'd sobbed, clutching my hands. The bank won't approve us without a cosigner. You're the only one with good enough credit. I'd stared at her, my voice flat. That's because I pay my bills. Sierra, our father, Wilfred, had looked up from his newspaper, his voice heavy with expectation. It's what family does. Penelope, Sierra would do the same for you. I'd bitten back a laugh. Sierra, who'd never lifted a finger for anyone but herself, our mother, Elena, had nodded, her designer earrings glinting. She's your sister. This is her dream. I'd felt the familiar guilt twist in my gut. The same guilt that had emptied my savings for Dad's heart surgery while Sierra jetted to Paris. I'll pay every payment. I swear. Sierra had promised. Her eyes wide. Eric's startup is about to explode. We'll be millionaires. I'd signed, but not before slipping a clause into the fine print with Genesis, my friend in legal. If Sierra and Eric defaulted and fled the country without a payment plan, The $50 liability would shift to our parents, who'd co-signed as witnesses, a landmine. Genesis called it, my insurance. Now, in the ballroom, I tapped my tablet, checking the clause for the 100th time. Its words glowed like a promise. Section 7, 3, liability reassignment. Across the room, Sierra twirled with Eric, her tiara catching every light. Her laughter, sharp and carefree, was the same she'd used to beg me, Penelope, darling. Why aren't you dancing? Elena's voice cut through, laced with disapproval. She gestured to the crowded dance floor, her designer shawl slipping. Someone has to make sure the vendors get paid. I replied, my tone dry. Unless you'd like to handle the final $1,000. She wrinkled her nose. That's what you're good at. Dear, numbers. Sierra's our creative spirit. I swallowed the retort I'd honed for years, smiling instead. Of course. Mother, my tablet pinged a confirmation from Genesis. The clause is bulletproof. They won't see it coming. Eric caught my eye across the room, raising his champagne glass with a wink. I raised mine back, wondering if he'd read the paperwork. I wonder if he knew I'd seen him book 2 one-way tickets to a country beyond the reach of American banks. The photographer called us outside for sunset photos, and Sierra dragged me along. Penelope, you're in these. You made this possible? If only she knew how true that was. The setting sun painted Chicago's skyline gold. Sierra's face flawless against the balustrade. Our parents joined us, the photographer arranging us like a perfect American family. Big smiles, he called. I smiled, thinking of the clause, of the email from Genesis. The moment they miss a payment, it's active. As Sierra hugged me, champagne on her breath, whispering, "You're the best sister." I felt the snake stir. Let's see who pays now. 6 months after the wedding, I sat in a Chicago coffee shop, my phone's call log a graveyard of 32 unanswered attempts to reach Sierra. The $50,000 loan payment was 3 weeks overdue, and my credit score teetered like a house of cards. At my current age, I have become a ghost in my own story, chasing after a sister who fled to a tropical paradise with no extradition treaty. Sierra's latest Instagram post flashes across my screen, her and Eric on a beach. Cocktails raised. Captioned, "Living our best life. Debt-free and destiny-bound." The words burned, each hashtag a dagger. No regrets. Blessed. I'd known they'd run. But knowing didn't dull the sting. Genesis slid into the seat across from me, 2 lattes steaming. "You're obsessing again," she said, her manicured nails drumming the table. "How many times have you checked Instagram today?" I turned my phone to show her Sierra's post, her smug smile mocking me from 3,000 miles away. "Look at this," I said, switching to my messages. A text from Elena. The bank called again. "Penelope, please handle this. You know your father's blood pressure." I laughed. Bitter. Handle it. Like I handled Dad's $28 surgery while Sierra posted selfies from Europe. Genesis's eyes narrowed. "Have you told them about the clause?" "Not yet," I said, my finger hovering over the email draft to the loan agency. The clause highlighted in yellow. My phone buzzed a voicemail from Sierra. I played it on speaker. "Hey, sis." Her voice chirped, laced with a fake apology. "Sorry. I've been hard to reach. The Wi-Fi here is awful. About those payment notices. I know you'll figure it out. You're so good with money stuff. Oh, and could you stop calling so much? It's kind of desperate. Kisses." Genesis muttered something unprintable. The audacity. I deleted the message. My chest tight. "You knew this would happen," she said, pushing a latte toward me. "Send the email." I stared at the screen. The clause's words a lifeline. Liability reverts to original sponsors upon default and departure. Sierra and Eric thought they'd outrun me, but they hadn't read the fine print. I thought of the tickets I'd seen Eric book, the smug wink at the wedding. My phone buzzed again. "Elena, insistent Penelope, call me." The bank is relentless. I showed Genesis the draft. Proof of Sierra's departure attached flight records. Instagram geotags. Send it, she said, her voice firm. Stop torturing yourself. My finger trembled, then pressed. Send. The email vanished into the ether. A silent detonation. I leaned back. The coffee shop's hum fading. The snake had struck. Now, I'd wait to see who bled first. The email I'd sent to the loan agency was a match struck in a room full of gasoline. And by morning, the flames were licking at my family's feet. In my Chicago office, sunlight sliced through the blinds, illuminating my laptop screen where a new message from the agency glowed. Liability reassigned to Elena and Wilfred per section 7-3. Contact initiated. My phone buzzed Elena, her voice shrill through the speaker. Penelope, what is this? They're saying we owe $50. Darns, this is a mistake. I leaned back in my chair. The city's hum a distant pulse. No mistake. Mother, check your email. I sent you the contract you signed. Papers rustled on her end. Then a gasp. We only signed as witnesses. Read section 7-3, I said, my voice smooth as glass. Silence followed, heavy with realization. You tricked us, she whispered. I smiled into the phone. No, I learned from you. Remember what you said? It's what family does. My computer pinged again. Sierra. Her email, a venomous scrawl. You're destroying Mom and Dad. Happy now. You controlling witch. I deleted it without replying. But Eric's text followed. Sharp and desperate. Real nice. Penelope. Sierra's crying. Hope you're proud. I typed back. You should have read the fine print and blocked their numbers. The snake I'd unleashed was uncoiling. Its fangs bared. Genesis texted. Clause is active. Legal's moving fast. Your parents are freaking out. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness mirroring my mood. They'd thought I'd fold, like always when I'd paid Dad's hospital bills. When I'd worked 2 jobs to cover Sierra's whims. Not this time. My phone lit up again. Stefan, my ex, his voice soft, saw Sierra's posts. You okay? I kept my tone neutral. Why wouldn't I be? He hesitated. Because you always fix everyone's messes, and no one fixes yours. I thought of the clause, now a living thing, sinking its teeth into my parents' complacency. That's changing. I said, hanging up. My office door creaked. My junior associate poked his head in. Penelope, can you co-sign the Miller account? Just a formality? I met his eyes, my voice firm. No, I don't co-sign anything anymore. He blinked. Retreating, I turned back to my screen, where the agency's email promised further action within 48 hours. The city sprawled below, oblivious to the war I'd ignited. I'd lit the fuse, and now I'd watch the explosion. Patient as a predator, my family had taught me to wait. Wait for gratitude. Wait for fairness. They'd never arrived, but justice, that was coming, and I'd be there to see it land. The explosion I'd anticipated arrived a week later. A Sunday dinner at my parents' suburban Chicago home, orchestrated by Elena with the precision of a stage director. I walked into their dining room, the air thick with the scent of lasagna, my childhood favorite, laid out like a bribe. Your father made it special, Elena said, serving a generous slice, her smile brittle. Remember helping him in the kitchen. I set my fork down. Untouched. I remember paying $1,000 for his heart medication after those kitchen days. Let's skip the nostalgia. Mother, why am I here? Wilfred cleared his throat, his hands trembling. The bank's relentless. Penelope. They're talking liens. I nodded. Unfazed. Banks get that way about $50,000. Elena reached across the table, her monogrammed bracelet glinting another of Sierra's gifts. No doubt bought with my money. We could sell the vacation property, she said, voice quivering. I laughed. Sharply. The one you remortgaged for Sierra's wedding? The one I was meant to inherit. I pulled a folder from my bag, sliding it across the table. Let's talk fair. Inside was a spreadsheet. Every dollar I'd bled for them, $28,000 for Wilfred's surgery, $40,000 of my college fund for Sierra's art school, $12,000 for her first car. The total $80,000 could have bought a condo. Elena pushed the folder away. We're not here to dwell on the past. No, I said. You're here because the collection agency's drowning you. Wilfred's voice was quiet. We raised you, gave you everything. I opened my phone, pulling up Sierra's latest Instagram post, her and Eric on the beach at that same vacation property last summer. Captioned, Paradise vibes. Family love. You gave Sierra everything, I said, turning the screen. You let her stay there rent-free. You knew she was planning to run. Their guilty silence was louder than any confession. You helped her. I continued, my voice low. Thought I'd just pay the $50,000, like I paid for everything else. Elena's eyes welled. You're stronger than Sierra. You can handle these things. I leaned forward, letting her words hang. Tell me more about how being used makes me strong. My phone buzzed. Genesis. How's the ambush? I typed back. They're crumbling. Elena grabbed my hand. Darling, we can fix this together. For the family, I pulled away. Where was this family when I worked 2 jobs during Dad's surgery? While Sierra posted from Europe. Where was it when you took my college fund? Wilfred stood, face flushed. We thought you'd understand. That family protects each other. I rose, pushing my plate aside. Funny how that protection only flows one way. Elena's voice broke. We'll lose the house, then sell the vacation property. I said, grabbing my purse. Call the agency. Set up a payment plan. I'm done fixing your messes. Wilfred's voice followed me. You knew we'd sign that contract. You planned this. I turned at the door, meeting his eyes. And you planned to let Sierra drain me dry. Looks like we both made choices. My phone buzzed again, Eric. From a new number. Got your message. Visa issues are cute. But I know things about your company. Reconsider. I forwarded it to Genesis with 3 words. Time for phase 2. She replied instantly. Let's bury them. Outside. I sat in my car, hands shaking on the wheel. The suburban street was quiet, but my pulse roared. I opened my laptop, drafting an email to the loan agency's fraud department. I have evidence of a premeditated default. Attached were Sierra's emails plotting their escape, texts joking about dodging the debt, and photos of my parents helping her pack. I hit send, the night swallowing the click. My phone rang Elena again. I declined it, whispering to the empty car. Consequences aren't just for me anymore. The city lights beckoned as I drove away. The spreadsheet's numbers etched in my mind. They'd taken $80,000 of my life. Now, I was taking back control. One calculated move at a time. The fraudulent email I'd sent was a guillotine blade, and within days, its edge gleamed in the chaos it unleashed. In my Chicago office, I scrolled through a financial whistleblower site where leaked loan documents, Sierra and Eric's signatures, stark against the $50,000 debt, had sparked a digital wildfire. Sierra's Instagram, once a shrine to her tropical escape, was now a battleground. Comments flooding her latest post, fraudster living large while your sister pays, disgusting. My phone buzzed. Genesis. Her voice electric. Turn on the local business channel. I pulled up the live stream, and there was Eric, escorted from a sleek Chicago high-rise by security. The headline scrolling, startup founder probed for international fraud. I leaned back, a smile curling. Actions. Meet consequences. My computer pinged an email from the fraud investigation team. Your presence is requested for a video conference with Sierra and Eric. Please provide additional evidence. I opened my insurance folder, a digital vault of damning proof, Sierra's texts gloating about dodging the debt, Eric's emails to offshore contacts, photos of my parents loading suitcases into Sierra's car 2 days before the wedding. My phone lit up a video call from Sierra, her face blotchy with rage. You evil witch, she spat. The detention center's gray walls behind her. Our visas are revoked, our accounts frozen, Eric's deals are collapsing. I tilted my head. Voice, cool. Sounds like a bad day. Try reading contracts next time. Eric paced in the background, shouting into his phone. His startup empire crumbling. You're toxic, Sierra hissed. We're family. Exactly, I said. And this is what family does. Right. Leave someone else to pay. I ended the call. Her sobs cut off like a slammed door. Elena appeared at my office unannounced. Her makeup flawless despite red-rimmed eyes. They're investigating Sierra for fraud, she whispered, sinking into a chair. Our baby could go to jail. I kept typing. Unmoved. Should have thought of that before you helped her pack for the Maldives. She slammed her hand on my desk. How did you become so heartless? I met her gaze. I learned from watching you choose her every time. My phone buzzed. Wilfred. Defeated, the vacation property sold. $500. $1,000. Below asking. Debts partly covered. I'd already seen the listing. Had my offer ready. That $600, $1,000 beach house, my supposed inheritance, was now mine for a steal. Thanks to their desperation, another buzz, Eric. From yet another number. We're stranded. The embassy won't help. Sierra's panicking. Name your price. I showed the message to Elena, who gasped. See, I said, he thinks he can buy me off. I typed back. My price, every dollar you stole, plus interest. Calculate it. I'll wait. Elena stood, trembling. You're destroying us. No, I said, turning my screen to show the whistleblower site. You destroyed yourselves. I just made it public. As she left, I forwarded the latest evidence to the fraud team, a screenshot of Sierra's email mocking my reliability as she planned her escape. Genesis texted fraud interview tomorrow. Ready to end this, I replied. Born ready. The city skyline glittered outside. A mosaic of ambition and betrayal. I'd turned their game against them. And the board was mine. The waves lapped at the shore of my new beach house. A $500, $1,000 sanctuary carved from my family's wreckage. I sat on the sand. The collection agency's final notice in my hands, $50. $1,000 debt resolved through asset liquidation. Case closed. The coastal air was sharp, cleansing. As I scrolled through a news alert Genesis had sent, local couple detained at U.S. Mexico border, facing federal fraud charges. Sierra and Eric's attempt to sneak back had collapsed spectacularly. Their faces splashed across headlines. My phone buzzed. Elena, pleading, they're holding them. Please, help. I typed back. New phone. Who's this? And let the wind carry her next messages away. Unread. Wilfred appeared, a shadow against the sunset. His suit hanging loose on a frame diminished by guilt. He sat heavily beside me, sand dusting his shoes. The house sold. He said, voice hollow. We're moving to an apartment next week. I closed my laptop. The fraud team's email still open. Charges filed. Thank you for your cooperation. Downsizing's healthy. I said, eyes on the horizon. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Sierra's handwriting scrawled across it. Found this in her old room. Dated before the wedding. I opened it. The words, a final betrayal. Penelope, we're gone by now. Thanks for being our cash machine. Mom and Dad will guilt you into cleaning this up. XOXO. Sierra. I folded it carefully. My voice steady. She never saw me as a sister. And you never saw me as a daughter. Wilfred's eyes glistened. We saw you as a fix. We were wrong. I nodded. The admission too late. You testified against them. I said, recalling Genesis's text. Parents' statement sealed it. He sighed. We told the truth. Finally. My phone vibrated, a video call from Sierra. Her detention center jumpsuit stark against her tear-streaked face. They're charging us with fraud. She sobbed. Mom and Dad betrayed us. How could you? I held up my house keys. The beach house's silhouette behind me. Remember this view. It's mine now. Legally. Forever. Her face crumpled. We're family. Not anymore. I said, ending the call and blocking her number. Genesis appeared at the dune's crest. 2 champagne glasses glinting, ready to christen this place she called. I stood, brushing sand from my jeans, and opened my banking app. Accounts in my name only. $100,000 strong. No co-signers. No guilt. Almost. I said, joining her. We stood on the deck. The sunset painting, the waves and hues of justice. To karma, Genesis said. Raising her glass. To contracts. I corrected, then softened, and to choosing myself. Our glasses clinked, the sound sharp against the ocean's whisper. My phone stayed silent, no more emergencies. No more manipulations, just peace, and a $500 for a deed in my name. Wilfred's words echoed faintly my $80. $9 in sacrifices had equaled their losses. A cruel arithmetic now balanced. The beach house, once their pride, was my triumph, bought at their expense. I thought of Sierra's note, her mocking XOXO, and the years I'd been their solution. Revenge didn't roar, it settled quietly, in legal clauses and property lines, in the stillness of a life reclaimed. As the last light faded, I stepped inside, the door closing on a family that had never been mine. The waves kept their rhythm, washing away the past, leaving only Penelope free, unburdened, and finally home. The phone's shrill cry sliced through the velvet darkness of my London apartment, jerking me from sleep at 3:17 a.m. My heart thudded as I fumbled for the glowing screen, the name Elise blazing like a warning. My sister never called, especially not from across an ocean, and never at this unholy hour. Her voice, when I answered, was a jagged sob, each word a shard of glass. Our father, Charles, had suffered a massive heart attack. They don't know if he'll make it. Eliza, she wept. You need to come home, now, in that moment. My world, my fashion career, my dreams, my carefully built life shrank to a single, desperate need to reach my father before it was too late. But what I didn't know, as I threw my life into chaos for a one-way ticket, was that the tears on the other end were a lie, and the family I thought I knew was playing a game I'd never seen coming. I was 32, a designer clawing my way up in London's cutthroat fashion scene, and that call shattered my rhythm. My hands trembled as I stuffed clothes into a suitcase, the half-finished sketches for my upcoming showcase at Harrington Fashion House taunting me from my desk. I dialed airlines, my voice cracking as I secured the last business-class seat to Hartford, Connecticut, draining my savings with a single swipe. The city outside my window was still asleep, but my mind raced, replaying Elise's words, "Dad was asking for you." Charles, at 63, had always been a pillar tennis thrice weekly, bourbon his only vice. A heart attack felt like a betrayal of his strength. I tried calling Hartford General during a snatched moment, but the line was maddeningly vague, no one able to confirm his condition. By 7 a.m., I stood in my studio, facing Marian, my mentor, her sculpted eyebrows arching at my packed suitcase. "Eliza, the Phillips presentation is in 5 days," she said, her tone clipped. "This showcase could define your career." My throat tightened, tears threatening. My father might be dying. I managed. Her expression softened, but her words were a blade. "I can't hold your spot if you leave. We'll reevaluate when or if you return." I nodded, the weight of my choice crushing, and left the studio, the morning light mocking my unraveling dreams. The transatlantic journey was a blur of sterile terminals and bitter coffee. On a layover in New York, my phone pinged with a text from Margaret, our elderly neighbor who'd been a second mother growing up. "Be careful. Eliza, things aren't what they seem." My pulse spiked. I called her immediately, but a man her son, I assumed, answered, saying she was resting. When I pressed, he hung up, leaving me staring at my phone as the boarding call echoed. The plane descended toward Hartford, and memories of my father surfaced, his encouragement of my design dreams. His defiance when I chose London over the family's real estate business. But now, with his life in question, I wondered if I'd been wrong to leave. As the wheels touched down, I braced myself for the hospital, unaware that the truth waiting for me would shatter everything I believed about family. The Hartford airport was a sterile maze, but Eric's tall frame stood out at baggage claim, his preppy polished sandy hair, strong jaw unchanged, yet something was off. His eyes lacked the redness of grief. His hug was stiff and perfunctory. "Thank God you're here." "Eliza?" he said, but his somber tone felt rehearsed. "How's Dad?" I asked, searching his face. He hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his features. "It's touch and go. The doctors are doing all they can." His words were too smooth, too practiced. I insisted on going straight to Hartford General, my nerves fraying with every unanswered question. Eric's reluctance was palpable as he grabbed my suitcase, his pace slowing as if to delay the inevitable. The drive-through town revealed new developments stamped with the Walker Real Estate logo, sprawling where orchards once stood. Impressive. "Right," Eric said, catching my gaze. "Dad's vision transformed this place." I nodded, but his white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel hinted at a cost he wasn't sharing. At Hartford General, the cardiac care unit hummed with quiet efficiency. Eric led me to the nurse's station with a confidence that suggested familiarity, but the charge nurse's frown stopped me cold. "Room 417. Charles Walker," Eric said. She typed, then shook her head. "We don't have a patient by that name. Room 417's been empty since Tuesday." My stomach plummeted. I turned to Eric, whose face had drained of color. "What's going on?" I demanded. My voice sharp. He stammered. "There must be a mistake. Maybe they moved him." But the pieces were clicking together. Margaret's warning, Eric's evasiveness, the hospital's empty records. "Is Dad even sick?" I snapped, loud enough to draw stares. Eric grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the exit. "Not here." "Eliza," I yanked free. "Tell me the truth, or I'll make a scene you'll regret." His shoulders slumped. "Dad's not here. He's at home. It was a minor scare, not a full-on heart attack. We exaggerated." The betrayal hit like a physical blow, my breath catching as I followed Eric to the car. His vague excuses about family duty and my long absence only fueled my fury. At our colonial-style home, the driveway was crowded with expensive cars. Bernard Whitfield's sedan, Uncle Thomas's Porsche, suggesting a gathering far from grief-stricken. Inside, voices led me to the dining room, where my family sat, not in mourning but in calculation. Charles stood by the window, robust with a tumbler of bourbon. No trace of illness. Lillian, in pearls and cashmere, sipped tea. Elise, whose tearful call had dragged me across an ocean, cradled a coffee mug. Bernard, our lawyer, shuffled documents. They froze as I entered, a tableau of guilt. "Eliza, sweetheart," Charles said, setting down his drink, arms outstretched. I stepped back, my voice icy. "Don't." Lillian stood, smoothing her slacks. "We know you're confused. I'm not confused." I cut in. "You lied. You made me think Dad was dying." Elise's eyes darted away. "We needed you home," she said, as if that justified everything. For what I pressed, Bernard cleared his throat. But Charles spoke. "There's a situation with the business. We needed to discuss it in person." My mind raced to my grandfather's trust. The $8, $2 million inheritance due on my 33rd birthday. Locked until I pursued a career outside Walker Real Estate. A flicker in Charles's eyes confirmed it. "This is about the money, isn't it?" I said, the realization dawning. "Your inheritance," Lillian admitted, unapologetic, "is perfectly timed to save the family." Charles waved me off. "Go upstairs. Rest. We'll talk at dinner." I nodded stiffly, retreating to my childhood bedroom, where rage and hurt churned. They'd faked a heart attack, exploited my love, all for money. But as I sank onto my bed, trembling. I knew one thing: the naive daughter they expected was gone, and I'd make them regret underestimating me. The rage that carried me to my childhood bedroom hardened into resolve by dawn. My family thought they could manipulate me into surrendering my inheritance, but they'd misjudged the woman I'd become. I needed answers, and I'd start with the one person who'd tried to warn me. Slipping out the back door before breakfast, I walked to Pete's Diner, its neon sign a beacon in the morning mist. Margaret waited in a corner booth, her silver hair gleaming, her eyes sharp despite her 78 years. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, sliding a folded newspaper across the table. The headline screamed of Walker Development's woes. Construction halted on Lakeside project amid investor lawsuit. "Your family's in deep trouble," she whispered. "Overextended loans, nervous investors, whispers of shady deals. They need your money to plug the holes." Her words confirmed my suspicions, but the scale of their desperation chilled me. I tucked the paper into my bag, vowing to dig deeper. Back home, I found an old letter from my grandfather, hidden in my high school yearbook, its yellowed pages crackling. "Trust your instincts, especially with family," he'd written, as if he'd foreseen this betrayal. His trust, designed to protect my inheritance, was my shield, but I needed to know its strength. I called James Sullivan, his retired lawyer, now living in Florida. His voice, gravelly with age, grew grave as I recounted the fake heart attack. "Your grandfather feared Charles's recklessness. He said, 'The trust is ironclad. No one can touch it without your consent. And coercion clauses could redirect it to charity if they try.' Relief flooded me. But his caution lingered. 'Be careful. Desperate people do desperate things.' Armed with this, I returned to the dining room, where my family's forced smiles greeted me. I apologized for my outburst, claiming jet lag, and watched their relief betray their guilt. Eric offered to show me the company's projects. A transparent bid to sway me. We drove past half-built luxury condos, their skeletal frames silent, and a shopping center with empty storefronts. "Just waiting on permits," he said. But his tight grip on the steering wheel told another story. I asked about financing, my tone casual, and his vague investors. Bank's response deepened my suspicions. That night, alone in my room, I began my counteroffensive. Connecticut's one-party consent law allowed me to record conversations, so I hid my phone during dinner, capturing Charles's evasive talk of opportunities. I photographed Bernard's documents, their dense legal jargon hinting at a transfer that would leave me with nothing but a hollow title. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building, but I needed more to topple their scheme. As I lay awake, Margaret's words echoed desperate people. I'd have to move faster than their greed. The next day, Elise's invitation to a boutique downtown felt like another ploy, but I saw an opportunity. The overpriced shop was a facade, much like my family's unity, and over lunch at a trendy cafe, 3 glasses of wine loosened her tongue. "Dad's impossible," she slurred, spinning her glass, changing plans, promising investors things we can't deliver. "Eric's worse siphoning money to his accounts, thinking I don't notice." Her words were a gold mine, revealing fractures I could exploit. I probed gently, feigning sympathy. "Mom says she's mortgaged everything," I said, recalling Lillian's kitchen confession. Elise scoffed. "Classic mom. Playing the martyr. She's kept her trust fund separate, moving assets to her maiden name." The revelation stung. Lillian's vulnerability had been another lie. "What happens if I don't sign over my inheritance?" I asked. Casually, Elise's eyes darkened. "Bankruptcy. Lawsuits. Maybe worse. Dad's dealing with people you don't cross." Her warning gnawed at me, but I needed expert insight. I messaged Dylan, my high school boyfriend, now a financial crimes investigator, and arranged to meet at a coffee shop one town over. Away from prying eyes, his broad shoulders and steady gaze were a comfort. But his words were grim. "What you're describing, falsified projections. Hidden accounts sounds like wire fraud, securities fraud. Maybe money laundering, he said, leaning close. Federal charges. Years in prison. If you fund this, you could be an accessory. His warning hit hard, but his next question shook me. Are you in danger? I brushed it off, but his caution lingered. Document everything, but watch your back. I left with a new urgency, my resolve steeling against the risks. Margaret connected me with her nephew, a private investigator specializing in financial crimes. For a steep fee charged to my emergency credit card, he delivered a damning report: offshore accounts in the Caymans, properties under shell companies, and systematic misrepresentations spanning years. Walker Developments was a Ponzi scheme, using new investor money to pay old returns while funding my family's lavish lifestyle. I uploaded the report, along with my recordings, document photos, and notes from Margaret, James, and Dylan, to a secure cloud folder. I also drafted a timeline of events since Elise's call, every detail etched in my memory. Each piece tightened the noose around my family's lies. But I needed to be meticulous. One slip, and their connections, those people you don't cross, could turn the tables. That night, as I reviewed the evidence, Elise knocked on my door, her diplomat's smile faltering. I know this looks bad, she said, but we're family. We need to stick together. Her plea stirred a flicker of doubt, but I saw her for what she was: a pawn in Charles's game. As trapped as she was complicit. I'm thinking about it. I lied. Squeezing her hand, alone again, I stared at my grandfather's letter, its words a beacon. The Walker determination can be a blessing and a curse. My family's greed had cursed them, but my determination would be their reckoning. I was no longer just protecting my inheritance. I was fighting for justice, for the community they'd bled dry, for the truth they'd buried. As I drifted to sleep, the weight of my plan settled over me, not as a burden, but as a promise. The morning sun barely pierced the curtains, but my mind was alight with purpose. My family's greed had woven a noose, and today, I'd pull it tight. Charles's announcement at breakfast confirmed the trap. A major investor was arriving in 3 days, demanding proof of new capital, my inheritance. The staged urgency was laughably transparent, but it handed me a perfect deadline. 3 days should be enough, I said, my voice steady. To tie up loose ends in London. Their relief was palpable. Charles's smile smug, unaware I was orchestrating their downfall. I spent the day coordinating with Dylan, who liaised with the FBI, SEC, and State Financial Crimes Unit, ensuring every piece of evidence was in place. James Sullivan filed formal complaints. Time to strike when Bernard presented the transfer documents. My cloud folder brimmed with proof recordings, photos, the investigators' report, each a nail in their coffin. That evening, my family staged a grotesque charade, a gathering of cousins, aunts, and uncles, each delivering rehearsed pleas about Walker loyalty. My mother's brother, usually aloof, waxed poetic about our legacy, his words dripping with hypocrisy. I sat through it, my polite smile a mask, while Charles raised a toast to family unity and future prosperity. I clinked glasses, my stomach churning, knowing their facade would crumble by morning. Later, in my room, I penned my confrontation speech, every word honed to cut. Dylan's text buzzed through. Everything is in place for tomorrow. You sure? I thought of the community's stolen savings, the contractors unpaid, the employees facing ruin. I'm sure. I replied, time to end this. I woke before dawn, my childhood bed a relic of simpler days, the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, placed there by a father I no longer recognized. Stung with irony, I dressed in a charcoal skirt and cream blouse, projecting unyielding confidence. Downstairs, Lillian arranged pastries on fine china, her nervous smile betraying the stakes. Dressed for business. She noted, it's a business decision, isn't it? I replied, pouring coffee. Charles's jovial phone call to an investor echoed from upstairs, a performance I'd soon silence. Eric arrived with Bernard, who spread documents on the dining table with surgical precision. Elise, late and disheveled, hovered nervously. Charles began, "I want to thank you for putting family first." I bit back a retort. Taking my seat opposite Bernard, "I'd like to understand each document," I said, placing my phone on the table, its recorder humming. Bernard's explanation was cut short by the doorbell. Lillian frowned, but I was already moving. "I've got it," I said, opening the door to James Sullivan, flanked by FBI agent Heather Reynolds, SEC agents, Dylan, and uniformed officers. "Thank you for coming," I said loudly, ushering them in. Charles's face collapsed, shock, confusion, then horror as badges flashed. "Charles Walker," Agent Reynolds said, "we have warrants to search these premises for financial records." Lillian gasped, clutching the doorway. "What is this?" she demanded. I met Charles's glare. "I've protected grandfather's real legacy, not your house of cards." Officers surged past. Targeting Charles's study, I produced my evidence folders, revealing fraud against his sister, Rebecca, who'd taken her life after similar deceit. "You have no idea what you've done," Charles hissed, his charm gone. "You destroyed this family when you lied and stole." I shot back. Eric lunged, but Dylan blocked him. Poor decision. "Mr. Walker," he warned. Charles, Lillian, Eric, and Bernard were cuffed and led out. Their rights read, Elise, spared immediate arrest. Whispered, "You could have warned me, like you warned me in London," I countered. As police cars pulled away, Margaret arrived, her hand steady on my shoulder. Neighbors gawked, the Walker name unraveling before their eyes. I stood on the porch, the weight of justice grounding me. The weeks after the arrests were a whirlwind of depositions and raw conversations. My inheritance matured, and with James Sullivan's guidance, I poured a chunk into a restitution fund, ensuring victims like an elderly couple could keep their home. Their tearful thanks at the courthouse lightened my guilt. I transformed Walker Real Estate's old office into Community Development Partners, a nonprofit to finish abandoned projects ethically. With Margaret on the board, profits fed the restitution fund, rebuilding what my family tore down. Charles and Eric faced long prison sentences, their defiance unyielding. Lillian and Elise, cooperating with authorities, got shorter terms. Bernard, stripped of his license, crumbled under charges. At Charles's sentencing, he spat venom, blaming me for destroying his legacy. The judge's rebuke was sharp. "Your daughter showed courage, exposing your fraud." He got 15 years, his final glare cutting but impotent. Elise, on bail, approached me outside, her face gaunt. "I'm sorry," she said, admitting she'd testified against Charles and Eric, exposing hidden accounts. "I want to be better." I nodded, sensing her sincerity. A fragile bridge forming. Visiting Lillian in prison was harder. Her prison uniform couldn't dim her dignity. But her words surprised me. "I lost myself to fear," she said, tears falling. "You reminded me of the courage I buried." We talked, not healing all wounds, but planting seeds for something new. 3 years later, I balanced London's vibrant pulse with Connecticut's quieter call. Marion, impressed by my stand, partnered with me on a sustainable fashion line, my designs now carrying a purpose beyond aesthetics. In Hartford, my nonprofit thrived, the community garden on a once-abandoned lot, blooming under Margaret's care. Dylan, now more than a friend, arrived for long weekends, his steady presence a new anchor. Elise, released after 14 months, channeled her skills into prison reform, our emails cautious but warming. Charles and Eric remained silent, their pride a wall I no longer tried to scale. On a crisp autumn evening, I stood on my London Flats rooftop, the skyline ablaze with sunset. My phone buzzed Margaret's photos of the garden, Dylan's flight confirmation, a note from Elise about her advocacy. The ache of my family's betrayal lingered, a dull pulse. but it no longer defined me. My grandfather's trust had shielded more than money. It had freed me to right wrongs, to build a legacy of integrity. I'd lost the family I was born into, but forged one of purpose, Margaret's wisdom, Dylan's loyalty, a community's trust. As I headed to the studio for a final fitting, peace settled over me, a quiet triumph. What would you do if those meant to love you most betrayed you for gain? Would you forgive? Or fight? Share in the comments. And if this tale of deceit and justice struck a chord, hit like and subscribe for more real-life drama every week.